All right, can you hear me? Is this turned on? No? Can y'all hear me in the back? Okay, good. I feel like I'm not loud. I guess they can hear me back there. Okay. If y'all can hear me, well, good. It seemed like I'm... Okay. The first time I came to New York, I went to McDonald's, and I ordered my food and said I said I wanted tea, and they said hot or cold. And I just looked at them. I was like, "That's a stupid question. Of course, it's cold." But then they gave me cold tea, but it was unsweet, and of course that was weird too. But anyway, so I had to learn from there. We'll be in Proverbs. And then when I got here, I had to learn how to parallel park really quick. So that was... All right, y'all going to have to laugh at my jokes if we're going to get through Sunday school. If not, it's going to be a long morning. But anyway, this is one of those lessons really that can be preached every 3 months because it's so needful. Maybe not with the subject, not necessarily because I did it, because you know what I'm saying there. But there's one thing that I try to do as we go out on Saturdays, go out street preaching, go out wherever. There's one thing that I see the most often. I see it especially in the world, but you see it in churches, you see it in homes, you see it everywhere. There's one particular sin. Y'all think y'all could guess what it is? There's one thing that I see the most often. Any guesses? Somebody said it. Did you say it? It's pride. That's the most thing that I see. There's a lot of things that you see, but it's got to be pride. That's the most thing. But that's what I want to teach or preach on this morning is pride. Proverbs 16. Proverbs 16:5. Because, pride's a big deal. Okay? Proverbs 16:5. Everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. It's not necessarily pride as an abomination, but when you're prideful, you become an abomination. You see that when you're pride in heart, and that's why it's such a big deal, you see, that we're not prideful. But before we start, I think we need to pray. Would you mind praying, brother? Okay.
Father, thank you once again for the liberty to meet together here, our brother, that he has to share his life and experience and your word. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Appreciate that. All right, I think we all stop at 11? Cool, okay. Got 57 verses I think we got to look at. But Proverbs 13:10, if you would turn there. But pride is not necessarily just you just walking around with your nose, stuck in the air. I mean, surely that's pride. But there's a whole lot of difference. Pride can be subtle. For example, we can be proud in how much money we make. Okay, we can be proud of what kind of job we have, how good you sing, how good you preach. Okay, because I know good preachers, but yet they're so proud because they know that they're good preachers and they get praised so much for their good preaching. You can't even talk to them. Don't even want to be around them. They have great knowledge, great preaching. They can move you emotionally what they're preaching, but it's like, man, you're so proud that I don't even want to be around you. So, pride gets in the way of a lot of things. They can be pride in the home, on the job, as we'll see. So it's not just whenever you just think you're better than other people. I mean, pride can go a lot of different ways. Proverbs 13:10. Proverbs 13:10. Put this one on? Okay. Huh. Keep both. Okay. Okay, I got you. That makes sense. Okay. Proverbs 13:10. Only by pride cometh contention. Okay, what is contention? Contention is fighting. Contention is not being able to get along with other people. And I was thinking about this. You know why the divorce rate is so high? You know why we have murders, assaults, church splits? It's because of pride. People can't humble themselves long enough, you see, to get along. It's pride. A husband and wife can't get along because one or both is being prideful. It's usually the wife. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to get in trouble with my wife. I'm already getting dirty looks from my wife, so I better move on. But yeah, I got you. See, when I preach, I try not to look at my wife because, her looks tell me, to move forward or what. So that's why I just try to preach like this. Colossians 3:18. We're going to look at the rest of this chapter right here. So we're not just going to pick on one person. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as it is fit in the Lord. You know, pride can get in a woman's heart to where she doesn't want to submit to her husband, because pride is self-exaltation. When you're putting yourself above, you see. But humility will bring you low, and that's what a wife has to do. Is she going to submit herself to a husband? She can't be prideful. She has to humble herself. You see how pride can get in the way in her home? Okay. Verse 19. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. You know why it's hard for you to love your wife like Christ loved the church? Because of pride. Because when she doesn't meet your expectations that you put on her. Okay. See, there's nothing wrong with expectations except when they're self-centered. Okay, and that's when pride gets in the way, because when she doesn't meet those expectations, you get lifted up in pride and you don't love her. And the reason you don't love her is because men are conditional. We really are. For example, when I got married, I thought, okay, I've learned now, that, okay, I'll cook. I mean, she cooks and cleans, I'll work, pay the bills, and we'll live happily ever after. But it don't work that way. Women got to be loved. You know, and but that was prideful on my part. The next verse. Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing unto the Lord. You know why it's hard for children to obey their parents in all things? Because of pride. They think that they're smarter than their parents. They think they know more than their parents, which is pride, and they can't obey them in all things. So you see, pride gets in the way in our home. Next verse, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. You know, it takes humility to be a good father. It really does, because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of dads in a home, but there's not a lot of good fathers that are teaching their children. Fathers don't want the responsibility. It takes humility to be a good father. Let's see here. Let me get caught up with myself. Children need to humble themselves under the authority of their parents. But here's the thing too, if you got good godly parents, you ought to thank God for that. Because, you know, me and my wife, we didn't have godly parents, and it took a long time, you see, to learn these things. But another thing for the parents, for the fathers, just a little bit of advice here, make sure that you're winning with your children. For example, when you tell your children to do something, make sure you win those battles. When it's the battle of the wheels, make sure you win, because that's why a lot of families are dysfunctional. A lot of kids are so rebellious, is because parents are not winning those battles. You know, because kids are strong-willed. You got to break that will. You got to win. And like I tell my wife, it's like we got to be consistent. Consistency is the key into parenting properly. If you're not consistent, you're not going to be a successful parent. But not only consistently, be consistent. Okay. Y'all were looking at me like, man, this guy's got an accent, but that's fine. Yeah, we certainly got to win those battles, because I've seen parents, for example, like spank their children 4 or 5 times over the same thing, and they're like, well, I done spanked him for like 30 minutes, you know, here, just take it. Like if he wants something, we don't give it to him, but after 30 minutes, we just give up and finally give in. Don't do that. It don't matter if you have to sit there for 2 hours. It don't matter if you're late for work, late for church. Make sure you win that battle with your children, because if not, when they become teenagers, they're going to run right over you, okay? Or they'll just leave your house, and you know, you got to win them when they're small. That way, when they're older, you can have them. But anyway, let's see here. Verse 22, servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. You know, it takes humility. This is talking about the job, okay? Like your boss, okay? The master's in the flesh, that's your boss. It takes humility at work to submit to your boss. If you're going to have a good relationship with your co-workers at work, according with your boss, you got to be humble. If you're prideful at work, you're not going to have a good workplace. Whenever the COVID thing was going on, there was a guy, he had a good job as a fabricator. It's a good place to work. Well, they moved us around a little bit because it was slow. Well, he didn't want to go over there and do the job that they wanted him to do, so he walked out and quit. Lost his job. Why? Because he was too prideful to do what he was told to do. So you see how pride can affect our homes, our marriages, our children, workplace, church. Why at church? Because you see what happens is at church we get stuck on ourselves and we say, well, nobody's doing it like I would do it, like I think you should do it, like you should, if it's not sinful, it shouldn't matter. Okay, if you say if you like Amazing Grace, I like Victory in Jesus, it don't matter. Some of those things, but people get puffed up in pride because they're not doing it your way, and you have church splits where they don't want to humble themselves under the authority of their pastor. If the pastor's straight, he might not, you ain't got to be his fishing buddy, okay? But he might like blue, you might like green, but you ought to humble yourself under his authority. Because if not, that's where church splits come, because of pride. The solution to 95% of all church splits is humility. Really, just humble yourself. Humility is better churches, better friendships, better jobs, better marriages, better everything. You know what makes a good pastor? A humble pastor. A good deacon? A humble deacon. Good Sunday school teacher, good president, good senator, good governor, good husband, good wife, good anybody. Just add humility to the mix of it. It makes things a whole lot better.
Like Trump?
Except Trump. Yeah, except Trump. I think what got Trump in trouble is his mouth. That's what. Yeah, his pride. Yeah, his pride. But if he'd have got that, he'd have been all right. But anyway, Luke 17:3. Don't worry, I think y'all talk weird too, so we're even. Yeah. Luke 17:3. Take heed to yourselves, if thy brother trespass against thee, rebuke him, and if he repent, forgive him. Okay, twofold application here. You know why you won't say sorry to someone that you offended? Because of pride. You see that? You can't apply this verse to your life because of pride, because in my pride, I don't want to say sorry to you when I hurt you, because I'm too prideful. All right? On the flip side of the coin, you won't forgive someone because of pride, because you hurt me. All right? No, you did that to me. It's all about me, me, me. So you won't forgive someone because you think that you're up here, and if you offend me, then no, you're dead. You see that? But you gotta be humble just to forgive someone. But that's prideful. Let's turn to, and also it's hard to offend a humble person, okay? Because why I say that is because when you think too highly of yourself, everything's going to offend you. But if you're humble, okay, and listen at this, being humble is not being weak, okay? Let's get Micah. I'll give you an example of that here in a second. Let's get Micah, chapter number 6. If you can get Matthew, turn back 6 books, and you can find Micah. You ever had like the pastor be like, turn to the book of Joel, and you're like, what's that? It's one of those books you just can't, it takes you about an hour to find. Micah chapter number 6. But I tell you what else is hard is when this is really hard. Let's say, for example, you have two people who are very prideful. It's hard for a prideful person to say sorry to another prideful person, because they know if I say sorry to that guy, he's not going to say I'm sorry back. So he's going to feel like he won. You see that? But anyway. Let's see. Micah, if I take my own advice, it's after Nahum. I can't. I'm just going to flip until I find it. Micah 6, verse 8. Because here's the thing, we make Christianity hard sometimes. We really do. We try to keep the list, of all those things. But, Christianity is not a list. If your heart's right, your heart's clean, and you love God, that list that we try to keep will just flow out naturally. You'll naturally love your neighbor. You'll naturally don't want to steal, naturally don't want to covet, just because you love God and you love people, and this comes out natural. Micah 6, verse 8. He has showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. What does God want? Okay, once again, we think that there's hundreds of commandments. God just gave us 3 things. Do what's right, be merciful, and be humble. If we can be humble, that's a third. That's 33% of it right there. And we just got to work on them other 2. Now, don't take me out of context. I'm not saying that we can... I'm not saying we have liberty to sin. But But also, I was thinking about this. You know, we can defeat Satan with humility. Yeah, that might not make sense, but turn to James, chapter number 4. What I was thinking on the way here, you know, my flesh beats up on me more than Satan does. I think I can handle Satan. I can't handle my flesh. The flesh is what really gets in the way. I think sometimes we give Satan too much credit. You know, it's really our flesh that gives us the big problem. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I'll say, "You're the problem." You know, and he always says it right back. As soon as I say it, he like says it immediately back. I ain't figured that one out yet. It's like he knows what I'm going to say because we say it at the same time. Okay, that was a joke. These guys are hard. Yeah, hard guys up here. Even my wife ain't laughing. All right. James 4, verses 6 through 7. But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. When we humble ourselves before God, we won the battle with Satan. Ain't that amazing? That's the power of humility, just to be humble before God. Because when we're humble before God, we're in His hands, and God says, don't touch him, devil. But here's the thing, too. When we're prideful, God is resisting. You know what resist means by definition? It means to withstand or stand against. So when I'm proud, God's got both arms out, Pastor, like this. You ever seen football, how they stiff-arm people? So let's say if I'm God and this is the proud sinner. That's a pretty good analogy, right? God's holding him out like this at arm's length. He says, no, you're proud. You're proudful. You can't come in. So not only that, I got Satan fighting me, the world, the flesh. Now I got God fighting me just because I'm too proud, you see, to humble myself. But that's a blessing, you see, if we could just be humble. You know, if you could be humble and not be prideful, you could be such a powerful Christian. But not only that, if you're a proud person, okay, but you act like you're right with God, you act like, you know, you got a good walk with the Lord, that tells me you're lying. Because I know God's resisting you if you're proudful. You want to be a great Christian used by God, then humble yourself. The best Christians are the most humble Christians. Okay? But not only that, with humility, this is what I try to do. I know I don't do this properly. But you always put humility right here, but you never achieve it. See where I'm coming from? You put it right here and you're always chasing it. It's kind of like putting a carrot there, because once I say I'm humble, then I cease to be humble. So I put humility right there and I just chase it my whole entire life. But I never reach out and grab it because I keep it there, and as I try to reach it, I always extend it. You see what I mean? And you'll naturally be humble. And other people, God will see that. You know, you shouldn't see that because you shouldn't have your eyes upon yourself. But that's one little thing. How can I be humble? That's one. And also that, compare yourself to God. Anytime that you think that you're righteous, compare yourself to the righteousness of God. But, you know, being humble is not weak. Let me give you an example. I had a guy at work. There was a boxing match or something going on, and the guys there were making bets, talking about the boxing match, you know, who was going to win. And he was my friend, so he could talk to me like this without anybody getting offended. But he said, what do you think about boxing? That's why I used to watch this, and now it don't really make sense. Being a preacher, Christian, watching two people just knock each other's teeth out. I was like, plus I don't have TV, so I just stay away from it. It's like, so let me ask you something. What would you do if I just slapped you? He's like, what would you do? And I just looked at him and I said, well, don't hit me and you won't have to find out. I said, what would you do? He'd have seen just how fast I could run. Okay? All right. Okay, y'all are hard. But no, you see, humility is not being weak. Okay, you can be bold. God says be bold. Step out by faith. Be courageous. Be faithful. For example, like yesterday at the farmer's market, okay, it takes humility to be out there, because if you get lifted up in pride, people are not going to hear you. You got to be out there and be humble. But you can step out, okay, be bold, take risk for God. That's another thing. Christians are not taking risk for God anymore. We used to step out by faith, you know, just leap off out there. But you can do those things and be humble, you see, at the same time. Being humble is not being weak. You know what I mean? But anyway, let's see here. Matthew 23:12. Did y'all know the very first time I ever preached in a church was here? I came up. I made the mistake of telling Pastor I was coming up, and he was like, how about preach for us? And I didn't text him back for like 4 hours. I was like, how do I tell him no? How do I tell him no? Because, your very first time, it's tough. Very tough. And especially when you come up here and see y'all. I mean, see people you don't know. 23:12. I'm going to find me some good New York jokes. I'm going to come back. I'm going to make sure I make y'all laugh. Verse 12. And whosoever shall exalt himself, that's pride, this self-exaltation, shall be abased. And he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. You know what? That's a definite article. If you're proud, you shall be abased. God said, I'm going to see to it. When you're proud, I'm going to bring you down. God's going to see to that. But when you're humble, definite article as well, I'm going to see to it that you get lifted up. See, ain't that a blessing? God's going to take care of that. And God says it's going to happen. You shall be abased. You shall be exalted. But you know what too? You know who makes good leaders? Is humble leaders. Okay, because here's the thing. I've seen people at work like get a supervisor job, a lead job, and they immediately, get puffed up, get proud. You know what I mean? Start wanting to tell people to do. But being a leader is being a servant. Okay? Let me prove this to you in 1 Kings. And leaders don't like to hear that. Okay? 1 Kings chapter number 12. It's amazing the wisdom that's in the Bible. I don't know if you ever read like a book from a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, anybody, billionaire. You can read it one time and you don't want to read it again because you're like, I got it. I already know what he's going to say. But the Bible, you can read it over and over and over and over, and you never get to the bottom. Never get to it. 1 Kings 12, verses 6 through 7. I'm going to verse 7, but let's get 6 for context. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon, his father, while he yet lived, and said, how do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, if thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and will serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. You see that? If you, talking to the leader, to the king, will be a servant to this people, a servant to this people, and serve them, they will be a servant to you. Okay, that's humanity. You ever done something kind for somebody? They automatically want to do something nice back for you. That's just humanity. It's kind of like if I open the door for you, the next door you want to get. You weren't going to, but because I did it, you want to do it. It's just natural. That's just humanity. That's kind of like if I serve you, you naturally want to serve me. Being a good leader is being a servant. Okay, I don't want to be a leader just so I can, because when people get promoted, they say, well, I want to better myself. Okay, I want to move up. But really, it's when you move up, whenever you want to better yourself, it's because you want to better other people. You see, that's being a servant. If I'm a leader, then I want to make sure that y'all are higher than I am. Okay, I shouldn't be y'all hear me here, but I should try to achieve y'all to here. You see, that's kind of like parenting. If my children only become as good as a Christian as I am, I feel like I failed. Okay, let's say I'm right here as a parent or as a Christian. I want my children to be right here as a Christian, and then their children. Not me, then children, then grandchildren, because then it's just going to die. You see what I'm trying to say? You see the pattern? That's like being a leader. You want people to exceed better than you exceed. Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. Don't you just hate those type of verses when you're proud and you read in your Bible, and you're dealing with pride. You read that. Pride goeth before destruction. It's going to happen. Destruction in your life will happen. You see, when you're prideful. A fall will happen when you're haughty. Proverbs 29. Proverbs 29, verse 23. Another definite. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. Once again, it's a definite article. It's going to happen. When you're prideful, it's going to happen. Okay? If you refuse to humble yourself, now listen to this, because of pride, your own pride is going to bring you down. You see that? Your own pride is going to humble you at some point because God says it's going to happen. 1 Timothy 3:6. This is the qualifications for leadership in the church. Not a novice. Now, some people think that's a young person, but you can be young, pastor, and still be a pastor, still be a deacon. Novice is just that immature, okay? Because you can meet a young man, very mature, very godly, very good. Samuel was just a young one. But that's just a matter of maturity. Lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into condemnation of the devil. Once again, a humble pastor is a good pastor. I'm trying to send him messages. No, I'm just kidding. But here's the thing, though, and here's why I say that, because you can have, let's say if a pastor, any pastor has been pastoring for 40 years. He's been trying so hard to get the ministry doing good things, okay, in the community, glorifying God, doing great things, and it's finally got there after 40 years of laboring, praying, trying, fasting, all those things. And well, he gets lifted up and says, look what I've done out of these 40 years. Well, in 3 weeks, the church splits. The church comes tumbling down. The church shuts their doors. The church does all these things. Why? Because the pastor got prideful and started robbing glory from God of what God did. You see that? 40 years of ministry gone in 3 weeks just because the pastor got prideful. You got to stay humble. Pride will ruin a ministry, a home, a good job. Pride will ruin your life. Pride leads to hell. I'm not talking about losing salvation. Psalms 10. People don't understand eternal security, but it's God's chastising, Pastor. When we sin, because they say, can you sin and still go to heaven? Well, if I sin, God's going to chastise me. It's not I sin and lose my salvation. Because if I could keep it, if it was up to us to keep it, none of us would be, there would be 0 people in heaven. 0. And they would also, listen to this, how it's not, we understand, for by grace are you saved, not lest any man should boast. We understand that verse, you can't boast. So if you could keep it, you could still boast when you got there, like, yeah, God gave it to me, but I kept it. So they would still be boasting if you could keep it. Psalms 10. Pride leads to hell. Verse 4. The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not all in his thoughts. Because of his pride, when you hand someone a tract, I'm good, I don't need that. They tear it up, it's because they're full of pride. And that pride is going to take them straight to hell. It really is. Matthew 18:4. The verse that I get the most slack on in street preaching? For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. In reality, that's like when you tell people I'm a sinner, it seems like that's the number one verse that just can't swallow. You would think everybody would understand that we're not sinners, but they don't. Matthew 18. So pride, okay, will keep you from coming to God. Pride will send you to hell. But you have to be humble before you can even be saved. Matthew 18:4. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whosoever shall receive one such little child in my name. Oh, verse 3, that's why it wasn't making sense. And said, verily I say unto you, except you be converted and become as a little child, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. You got to be humble, Pastor, before you can even call upon God. Because you see what humility is calling upon God, saying, Lord, I need you. I'm a sinner. Okay? And you put your trust in God. Let's see here. Why? Okay, why humble ourselves? Did you know God humbles himself? Let me give you some verses. Turn to Psalms 113. This is an amazing verse. Psalms 113, verses 4 through 6. This is just one. This is not my... I'm going to try to hurry past. Looks like I got about 7 or 10 minutes. Psalms 113, verses 4 through 6. The Lord is high above all nations, and his glory above the heavens. Who is like unto the Lord our God, who dwelleth on high, who humbleth himself to behold the things that are in heaven and in the earth. Ain't that an amazing thing? God is in heaven, sitting upon his throne, yet God is saying, it's humility for me to be here. God is in the third heaven. Okay, listen. He's sitting upon his throne, seraphims, cherubim surrounding him, and he's saying, this is humility for me just to be here. Ain't that amazing? He humbles himself just to behold things in heaven. That's an amazing thing, and in the earth. Now that's up there. You're talking about holiness. If you're being humble just to sit upon your throne, that's holiness. That's holiness right there. Compare yourself to God. Next time you're prideful, see if you can measure up to that. Okay. Next, let's get Philippians 2. Pastor just whispered to me to hurry up, so I'm going to try. I'm just kidding. All right, I'm not telling y'all any more jokes. Philippians. Okay. I hate it when I'm the last one to find it. Everybody's looking like, you ain't found it? You're supposed to be the preacher. Philippians 2, verses 3 through 11. And also, well, let me just read it. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men, and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name. God became a man. Okay, he became a servant. Can you see that? God, who says it's humble for me to even sit upon my throne, came down again and said, I'm going to become a man. He came down again, went to the cross. He came down again when he became sin for us, who knew no sin. 2 Corinthians 5:21. You see that? A holy God. If God hates sin more than anything because he is so holy and so righteous, yet God became sin because he humbled himself. See that? When we're prideful, we refuse to humble ourselves, so you're better than Christ. Okay? A holy God became sin, and you can't even say sorry to your wife, sorry to your husband, sorry to your brother. You can't even humble yourself. Man, that's bad. Okay? John 13. You see, it says that Christ says, it's no robbery for me to be equal with God. Okay? Because he was God. But he became a man. John 13. Verses 12 through 17. So after he had washed their feet, and had taken his garments, and was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye what I have done unto you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say, Well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. My wife won't do that. I don't know why. I keep giving her this verse, but she won't wash me. No. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Verily I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent greater than he that has sent him. If you know these things, happy are ye if you do them. Can you imagine God washing your feet? Like seriously, would you wash my feet? No. I'm definitely not washing pastors, all right? No. But could you imagine God washed people's feet? They wore sandals, okay, walked in the desert. It was nasty. And God got down on his hands and knees and washed their feet and says, this is what I want you to do too. Now, it don't matter. It don't mean necessarily it's not an ordinance in the church that we have to have foot washing. But what he's saying is be this humble, okay? Don't be scared to get down on your hands and knees and do something. You want to be Christ-like? Then be humble, okay? You want to go up? Then get down. Okay, you want to go down? Then get up. Job 41. So you can find Psalms. Job is right before Psalms. I think we're running right on time. Did you say 15 to 10 till? Okay. About 5 more minutes, we'll be done. Job 41. Now, Job 41 is talking about Leviathan, and we know from Scripture that that is Satan, okay, from Isaiah and Revelation. It talks about the serpent, okay. So this is who he's talking about. Job 41, verse 34. He beholdeth all high things. He is a king over all the children of pride. Ain't that amazing? If you're a prideful person, that tells me who your king is. I want Jesus Christ to be my king. He is my king. I don't want Satan to be my king. If you're prideful, Satan's your king. Okay? Pride is satanic, to be honest with you. It really is. Pride cometh before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Now, I'm just going to give you these verses because I just got a few minutes left. Listen at the power of pride, okay? King Herod in Acts 12, he was humbled. He gave a speech, and they said, this is not a man, it's a God. Well, he didn't give God the glory, so God smote him, and he was eaten of worms. He got humbled. You see that? His pride brought him down. Nebuchadnezzar was humbled. Nebuchadnezzar, according to Daniel, was a king of kings, lowercase. He was a mighty man. Well, for 7 years, he ate grass like an ox. He grew out feathers like an eagle. Okay, you know the story. Let's get Daniel real quick. I think we got time for that. Daniel's right after Ezekiel. He got lifted up in pride. For 7 years, he ate grass like an ox. Went all the way from the top, all the way to the bottom. And listen to what he said. Daniel 4, verses 37. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways judgment. And those that walk in pride, he is able to abase. Okay, he learned the lesson the hard way. All right, Jezebel in 2 Kings, she was humbled when they threw her off the wall. Okay, and the dogs ate her. She was a wicked woman full of pride, and she got humbled. Pharaoh and his army in Exodus got humbled when that Red Sea came crashing down upon them. They got humbled, you see, because they were lifted up in pride. Goliath in 1 Samuel was humbled by little David when he took that rock and hit him in the forehead. You see that? Don't matter how big you are, how powerful you are, God is able to bring you all the way down. In 2 Kings 19, there was a king of Assyria. He told Hezekiah, he says, don't trust in your God. He said, there's not been any gods that can deliver out of my hands yet. Well, the king of Assyria went back to worship in the house of his God. His own sons came and slew him. He was humbled because he spoke against God. In Revelations 19, the whole world is going to be humbled when Christ comes back to rule and reign with the rod of iron. You see, that pride's coming down. Okay, it's best to go ahead and get down on your own. Don't think that you're too big to get humbled. Humility is powerful. Okay, you know why humility is so powerful? Because that's when we can reach out and grab the hand of God. You see, pride is very powerful. It can bring down kings, leaders, it can bring down a nation. It can do anything. But humility, we go out and take God's hand, we can access His power because we're humble. You see that? But let me give you one more and we'll close with this. And the reason why God exalts a humble person, because you can handle it. Because see, when you're humble and when you get exalted, you don't care about that position and that power because you want to be a blessing to others. You realize who you are. 2 Samuel 22. This will make you think. 2 Samuel 22, verse 28. And the afflicted people thou wilt save, but thine eyes are upon the haughty, that thou mayest bring them down. You know what God's doing in heaven? He's scanning the horizon. You say, well, God, what are you looking for? I'm looking for a haughty man, one that's prideful so I can knock him off his hide horse. If you see him, let me know where he's at, because I'm looking for him. See that? God's eyes are on the haughty. If I'm prideful, God's looking at me. He's getting ready to knock me down. Okay? So I'd rather humble myself instead of God had to humble me. You know, pride is powerful. It's going to bring you down. Humility is powerful. It's going to bring you up. Okay, it's a mindset. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but took upon him the form of a servant. Found in likeness of a man, he humbled himself. That's the mind of Christ, is this to be humble. Humility is not weakness. Okay, pride is really weakness because that's insecurity. You know that? Pride is really insecure. You're insecure about yourself and who you are, so you're puffed up in pride and put on the front. But when you're humble, you're just like, what's up? What's up, New Yorkers? Bring it. Come on. All right. Okay, I'm done with the joke, seriously. But anyway, it's 10:50. Perfect. That's what I had. So I came all the way from North Carolina just to give you that.